Welcome everybody to episode 8 of the Marvel Buddies podcast. It's the end of the month, so as is tradition, the end of the month means that we are going over an event in the Marvel Universe. And with that being said, there is a slight spoiler warning. I will consistently update everybody with this, um, because the event we're talking about now is currently going on in the MCU. So, spoiler warning to that. I have linked as well the Marvel Buddies podcast YouTube channel, as well as the Google form for everybody to vote for next week's character, and um, as well as bringing on full time my buddy and 2 weeks ago our co-host, Addicts. How are you? How do you feel?
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Very excited to be doing this. Doing pretty good.
That's
Pretty
great.
excited for what you got in store for me today.
That's
like I'm
perfect.
looking at this, and it looks like we're going over Marvel What
It
If.
is. It is. That's what we're doing this
I
week.
can't wait to see how different this is going to be compared to the Disney Plus TV show.
Yep. Are you caught up on the Disney Plus TV show or?
I am. I've been watching it
Perfect.
religiously, dude, and
It's great.
I still got to say, dude, Strange Supreme. That's the best
It's
episode.
yeah, I definitely enjoyed that one. I personally enjoyed the Marvel Zombies episode quite a lot, as well as
Hmm.
the What If the Avengers Never Assembled episode? I
That one was really good. I will have to say the weakest episode for me so far was Party Thor, the most recent,
Yeah.
except for the ending.
I definitely thought the ending was pretty cool. Was that the ending where they showed off Ultron Vision, or was that in? Well, that was the
Hmm.
right. Yeah, I think that one was pretty cool.
Well,
But
Ultron's apparently just taking over the multiverse.
yeah, for sure. Let me well, I want to break most of this down towards the end, but I do want to give a little bit of brief information about Marvel's What If. So, the event, it debuted in 1977 to a plethora of authors. It wasn't just one guy that wrote. A bunch of different people got together from 1977 to about 1985 to write a bunch of like different stories on of What If based off of like really big events in Marvel Comics. So, for one, you had authors like Roy Thomas and Jim Shooter, who are like pretty famous for their Fantastic Four. Jim Shooter, if I remember correctly, Jim Shooter also wrote for the FF as well as some other characters. Shang-Chi, if I'm not wrong, Marv Wolfman, who did the if I'm not mistaken, also did Moon Knight. And then you have Jack Kirby, of course, legendary Marvel and DC writer, as well as Doug Moench and a bunch of different other characters. And there was a lot of major titles for me to pick from. Um, I picked two this week, but there was a lot of big events. A lot of them that end up becoming true into modern Marvel Comics. So you had like a really big one was what if Jane Foster found Thor's hammer?
Oh, that was actually a what if?
That was a what if. What if Jane Foster had found the hammer of Thor? And we know now that Jane Foster wields Mjolnir in the comics, as well as or has wielded Mjolnir, as well as what if someone else had been bitten by a radioactive spider? Uh, in the What If episode comic for that, they had a bunch of different characters like Flash Thompson, Emma Watson, not Emma Watson, what's her character? Gwen Stacy, bunch of different characters. Gwen Stacy becoming Gwen Spider Gwen, and the main modern character being Miles Morales getting bitten by that radioactive spider. But there were a lot of characters that came out of What If, specifically that Jane Foster, Miles Morales kind of thing. And they really tackled like the what if issues. Um, Being that we haven't covered much of these other events, I decided to go with stuff that everybody knew. Um, and it's a very Spider-Man heavy episode. There's a lot of Spider-Man in this. I think he appears more than Uatu the Watcher. Um, just
Okay,
of
so that's
how heavy it
actually
is.
a lot of this is literally the OG what if is basically a lot of Spider-Man.
Um, there were a lot of Spider-Man, but they had a bunch of different characters in that 77 run of What If, or like 77 to 80 something run of What If. They had they had like, what if the Phoenix had never died? What if everyone knew Daredevil was blind? What if Elektra never died? What if Sue Storm had decided to marry Namor the Submariner? A bunch of different things. They had a couple of Captain America ones that were pretty good. But I focused very heavily on Spider-Man because
because of Enter the Spider Verse.
um yeah, for one, Spider-Man is was the big character, and there was a lot of like Spider-Man characters. And I feel like Spider-Man is a common, like, really known Spider-Man character, but also to the other major character that they did a what if on was Rick Jones. And I don't think I've had to ever, I think only on the Loki episode did I briefly mention Rick Jones. Um, if you guys want to hear me talk about Rick Jones, I will for sure do it. But Rick Jones has definitely affected major characters in those early 70s and 60s comics. Being Hulk's like left hand man, the guy that calms Hulk down, and also being Captain America's sidekick after Bucky. Um, so there was definitely a lot of like Rick Jones comics because of how impactful he's been. But Spider-Man and Daredevil, I should say, are a close second for how many. Actually, I would say Spider-Man has like a little more than Daredevil, but there are a lot of Rick Jones and Spider-Man heavy comics, and so I decided I will wait till I cover Rick Jones. Spider-Man's a lot more known, and I definitely personally think that the Spider-Man comics here were fantastic. Um, but with that being said, the first one I got into was actually What If number one, which was written by Roy Thomas, and it's the title of the comic is What If Spider-Man Had Joined the Fantastic Four? And the story begins with Uatu, the Watcher, explaining what he is, what he does, and his role for Marvel Comics. Uatu, the Watcher, I don't remember the actor who played him, but he was that one dude from The Hunger Games who was really smart. Um, I don't remember
That
his name. He's the guy that
one dude from the Hunger Games who is really
yeah,
smart,
he
huh?
was the guy. Yeah, he was the guy that like put the copper wire together and had the electricity shoot through the tree across the copper wire and like electrocute the fence. I forgot his name. He's really short, little dark skinned.
Yeah, I know
Yeah,
exactly who
I
you're
forgot
talking
his
about.
name. He was also in Westworld, I think it was. He was in Westworld, if I'm not mistaken. He was one of the game developers.
I
But
can't believe I can't remember his name
yeah,
either.
his name always slips my mind. But he was a very big character, big actor. But either way,
Well,
yeah,
anyway, on the Watcher here,
The Watcher,
is he
yeah.
gonna? How different is his comic book adaptation to his Disney Plus adaptation?
So we haven't really seen much of The Watcher in like the MCU outside of What If, but um similar to how The Watcher in that one Doctor Strange episode has contact with Sorcerer Supreme and lets him know, like, you know, oh, you're I could not interfere, and so you're doomed to like die. He very rarely interferes or even communicates to characters. There's only that I know of. There's only been two instances where he's actually done so, and in doing so has put him in trouble with other Watchers. And it was when Galactus invaded Earth and the Fantastic Four needed to find a way to stop him. He gave Reed Richards the Ultimate Nullifier, I think it was called. It's pretty much a gun that distorts reality.
So
Um,
he has actually
he
interfered
has interfered
sometimes.
before, and the second time was giving Doctor Strange during Civil War advice, but in doing so, Doctor Strange rejected it. And the advice was, if you remember back on Civil War, you can the Watcher told um Doctor Strange that he could interfere in the Civil War and end the conflict with like a wave of his hand. And in doing so, Doctor Strange says, "I can't do that, and you know I can't." And well, the Watcher's like, I know exactly what you mean. I can't interfere, and you can't interfere in this conflict." And so it's other than that though, the Watcher tries to remain as like,
Completely neutral and
yep,
just watching.
like just watching. That's his job, the Watcher. And there's like I can go into depth more on the Watcher. But this is his major story is is this. And the Watcher is always appearing whenever there's a canon event going on. If there's something canon, the Watcher will appear in the background, right? And so, besides this what if story where it's him telling alternate realities, um, the Watcher only appears like regularly if like an important event has taken place. So, like one example was when Squirrel Girl beat Thanos. It was a really funny like Squirrel Girl is such a funny character. There's a scene with her and Tibito, one of the squirrels that she talks to, the main squirrel. They're standing on top of Thanos, and right behind it is Uatu. And there's like it's just to show that Squirrel Girl it really is the they call her the unbeatable Squirrel Girl for a reason. She's like honestly really great. But getting into what if number one, the Watcher he basically explains that like his job very self-explanatory. He can only watch and record events that are that he can see, and he knows all that has been, much of what will be, and everything that is. But with that, he can also see.
So he literally knows, like he's like an omnipotent being, right? Like
Yep.
he lives in different dimensions all at the same time, and he knows exactly what's going to happen in the
He.
future and
Yep.
everything.
He stands on the They call it the blue side of the moon. It's a place on the moon with oxygen where people can breathe. It's been referenced a lot. We get to see it here at one point. And the Fantastic Four, if you remember where when if like or not the Fantastic Four, the X-Men at the end where Jean sacrifices herself at the end of what was it? The Dark Phoenix saga. I can talk about that at the end, but they were doing that whole fight on the blue side of the moon. It's funny too. Wolverine gets thrown into Uatu's house, and he's like, "Where the hell am I?" And there's like just like a bunch of different like realities going around him, and Uatu's like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And he throws him out, kind of thing. It's a really funny like moment. But Uatu's his very like, what's up, Crown? But Uatu's very like he knows everything. He stands on that dark side or that blue side of the moon and just watches and records. That's his only job. Um, and in doing so, he can also see not just the world that he's from, but parallel and alternate dimensions of what could have been. Every branch of reality, what could have been, every like distortion in time, right? He can see whether or not like the way he puts it. These parallel worlds that he sees are literally anything. If someone decided, um, to save a guy that was about to get hit by a car, or whatever the event of that could have been, whether it was he didn't save the guy, he did save the guy, or he tried to save the guy and they both ended up dying, right? Like all these branches of reality that could have been, he can also see, and that's what if is. It's just Uatu explaining what could have been to major characters.
Oh, but what if this happened?
Pretty much. That is the entire story. And this is Uatu, the Watcher, and he explains everything that he knows. Like in some instances, there's one where Reed Richards had become the Thing instead of Ben Grimm. Worlds in which World War II was won by the Axis. Worlds where the Avengers and the Squadron Supreme fight. The Squadron Supreme is like a knockoff Justice League. Um, One in which aliens conquer Earth, and this one guy kill Raven the Warrior and his band of rebels are the only ones alive. And these are all like stuff that he sees currently, right, as he's explaining it. And he says there's one unique event where two accidents caused the creation of five of the world's greatest heroes, and it's the cosmic rays from the Big Bang affecting the Fantastic Four, and that famous spider bite transforming Peter Parker into Spider-Man. And Peter, as we all know, when he became Spider-Man, like in that very first Tobey Maguire movie, he goes out to that fight. He does those in the comic. It's a photo shoot of him as Spider-Man, but like never taking off the mask. Um, and so when he gets paid, he's like, I can't cash this in or the world will know I'm Spider-Man, right? Um, so um, like every if I cash this check in that says for Peter Parker, like, and the description being like I did work for Spider-Man, everyone will know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And so he gets two options, and it's like I can take a job at the Daily Bugle, which we know he does, or what he also does is try to get a job from the Fantastic Four. And so, this actually happens in one of the comics. I think it was like Fantastic Four number 14 or something like that. But Peter pretty much crawls into the Fantastic Four's like hideout, and he like kind of messes with them. They like trap him in a cage. He breaks out, and then he starts like webbing everybody and like doing flips and stuff. And here's Reed like pretty much stopping him. He's like, "All right, that's enough. You might hurt someone. What are you here for?" And Peter's like, "Okay, it's finally you guys asked me. I want to join your team. How much can you pay me?" Pretty much. Like
Okay, so this reality is instead of working for the Bugle, he goes to work for the Fantastic Four.
pretty much.
Okay.
The like, so the way it is in the original comic, before he gets the job from the Daily Bugle, he does this. He does like originally he does ask the Fantastic Four, but the Fantastic Four says all of our money goes into scientific research. We don't actually get paid for the work that we do. We pay the rent to the Baxter Building, and at that, because they have, if anyone ever saw that original Fantastic Four movie with Captain America as the Human Torch, yeah, um, yeah, there's a scene where Doctor Doom says, "Oh, are you here to take out your third mortgage on the Baxter Building?" Like they are broke, right? But even so, all their money goes into scientific research. Um, and they're talking, and he's Peter's like, "So will I not get paid?" And he's like, "Sorry, we really can't afford to pay you." And so he leaves. But Sue, in her original reality, Sue Storm stays silent. But in this reality, Sue says, "Peter, come back." And he turns around and goes back. He's like, "Ah, so you can pay me." And Reed's like, "Maybe I can work something out." And so he does. He finds a way to pay Peter, and he comes home. He hands Aunt May the rent money and says, "Look, I got a weird job. It pays weird hours, but I can pay rent now, and you can now depend on me. You don't have to, like before you were depending on Uncle Ben to help pay rent. Now I can provide, being that Uncle Ben is dead and it's my fault, kind of thing." So, yep,
Oh, that's a very
it's
dark way
very
to put that.
this is how he does it. But so when he gets the job, he's like, "All right." The Fantastic Four are pretty much like, "All right, you can take the job, but it comes with a cost. We don't know who you are. Like, you need to let us know like your identity." And so Peter does. He's this is where like this is Reed telling him that you know they like he can pay him. And then here's Peter taking off the mask and telling everyone like, "It's Peter Parker, the kid from Midtown High." And it's like, "Oh, everyone thought it would be like some weird Doctor Doom thing, but it's actually a real kid." And when in the next morning they head out, and the Fantastic Four say, "All right, we're gonna hold a press conference in front of everybody." Fantastic Four has always been like a very vocal, very like, "This is who I am" kind of thing. And
Mhm.
everyone's like, "Oh, I wonder what the press conference is for." Even the Daily Bugle's there, and everyone thinks it's something to do with the Hulk, because in that issue before this, they had a fight with the Hulk. It's like, "Oh, are they gonna talk about what went down south with the Hulk?" And they get ready, and they're like, "All right, we are announcing that we are no longer the Fantastic Four. We're gonna be the Fantastic Five." And they're like, "Oh, who's gonna be the new fifth member of the Fantastic
He's
Four?"
gonna be the fifth
Yeah,
man.
yep. And the Daily Bugle's super excited. Jonah's like, "Oh, that's great. We're gonna get another hero in." And then Peter Parker comes swinging in as Spider-Man with his with the five on his chest right here, and Jameson flips out. He's like, "How could you make this guy your fifth member? He's wanted for like crimes. There was a previous issue of Spider-Man where Jameson's son is an astronaut, and his rocket ship kind of fails on landing, and Spider-Man saves Jameson's son. His name, I think Jameson's son, if I remember correctly, was like John Jameson or something like that. Is Yeah, John Jameson. And Jonah, because he saw Spider-Man at the scene of a crash ship, says that he Spider-Man tampered with the ship to make himself look like a hero, and then this was the ultimate result to become a member of the Fantastic Five as it is now. But Reed, being like really good friends with the people at NASA, is just like, no, I've cleared this situation up. He's no longer you know, wanted or even accused of his. He's no longer technically he was accused, so he's no longer accused of that. As of this morning, Spider-Man is now the fifth member of the FF, which, funny enough, still remains the FF. And so like
The Fantastic Five.
five, yep, yep. So Jameson like is like, whoa. I have nothing against Spider-Man now. I can't go after him because I can't say he's a criminal since he's working with the Fantastic Four now, who I have come out and said are heroes. So Jameson's kind of like, I always knew I was always a fan of you, Spider-Man. I was always just playing devil's advocate. And then he's like, you know what, Spider-Man? I endorse you. And he like gives him a handshake. And he like tries to get a picture of him for the Bugle. And it's funny enough, the photographer is Eddie Brock, and he goes, God, it's so hard to find good photographers these days because he doesn't have Peter. It's really really great. Here's Jameson with Peter or Spider-Man and the
Yeah, something
photographer.
about this is just wrong.
Yeah, it
I don't like where this is
it
going.
gets crazy, but you know, with Spider-Man announcing himself as a member of the Fantastic Five now, um, the criminal, the Chameleon, he is the cousin of Kraven the Hunter. Um, and his ability is that he can shapeshift into other people with this special belt. Um, so his plan was he was gonna shapeshift into Spider-Man and frame him for more crimes and continuously use that accusation of being a criminal from Jonah um to like really stamp out the fact that Spider-Man's a criminal by impersonating Spider-Man. And so like he goes into like obsoletism. He just like, I can't do anything anymore because he's a hero. He's a known hero, and my job of framing him is over. And so the next issue, which is Spider-Man #2, shows Vulture attacking Manhattan. And so in the normal case of Spider-Man in that issue, he was alone and having to fight a villain, which he was clearly out of his depth. Spider-Man can't fly. I mean, he can swing and do well, but he can't really reach the levels that the Vulture can. And so it would have been similar to how Homecoming was, Spider-Man Homecoming, how difficult it was for Spider-Man to, even though ultimately he does beat Vulture, it takes him, he doesn't beat him first try. And so with the Fantastic Five this time, um, it makes it a lot easier. Johnny burns the metal wings off of the Vulture, in which in our universe, the universe that we know, it would have taken Spider-Man to build an anti-magnetic inverter, as they put it, to counteract the Vulture's magnetic wings, and that way also he can beat up the Vulture and also change into Peter Parker and take a photograph of it for the Daily Bugle so he can get paid. All of that like work that he had to do, like beating the Vulture, building the machine, taking the picture, all made easier from the simple fact that he has teammates that pay him. Um, and
So
so
now, essentially, in this reality, Spider-Man has his own quote Sinister Six, but it's the Fantastic Five now.
no, so where the Sinister Six are his villains, a lot
I was
of
gonna ask, is
villains
the Sinister
shine.
Six gonna? Are we gonna get an epic Sinister Six versus the Fantastic Five in this, or
We
is that a
we
spoiler?
we don't, sadly. We only get the only Spider-Man villain we get is Vulture. There's a lot of Fantastic Four villains that make their appearance. And so um the next mission, it's funny enough,
Yeah, I'm just trying to in my head figure out how this is gonna turn out bad for Spider-Man.
it doesn't turn out bad for Spider-Man, I should say that. But the next mission you have Reed coming out and saying like, oh, we got to go back to our scientific research, And so I found a way to harness the energy of a meteor and put it in a rocket. And just to let everybody know, I didn't want to put this in, but this comic is so old, America was still fighting the space race. Here's Spider-Man saying, "Then America will win the space race," right? It's a fairly old comic. Um,
Ooh.
yeah, and and so um, Reed has this whole plan. He's gonna get a rocket ship or something, head to like this spot on the moon, the blue side of the moon, and grab the crystals from the meteor. That had like a meteor that had crashed on it, and then like it was in some sort of like city or ruined city. Grab it, pull it back, and then head back. But while Reed is setting it up, he tells Sue. Typically in the original comic, they would have gone with Susan Storm, but being that now they have Spider-Man, he tells her, "Hey, we need someone back here, kind of like surveying. Can you stay behind?" And Sue kind of gets jealous. She's like, "I should have never said anything. They're going without me. I've become obsolete." Right? And she gets really upset. And all of this is at the same time is being while all this is happening, this is really funny. A character by the name of Ivan Kragnov, oh, another Russian character for that whole,
Ivan
right?
Kragnov.
Ivan Kragnov. It's another Russian character created by these guys in the 70s from that, Cold War era. Um,
That sounds a lot like
yep.
Ivan from Metal Gear Solid 3.
Funny enough, I never played any of the Metal Gear games, but I
Ivan Rykov.
I might know who you're talking about. I've seen like some gameplay of it. Maybe we'll stream a little bit of Metal Gear here. I might buy it and play some of it. But that aside, Ivan is in space with monkeys or apes, I should say, um, trying to get the powers of the Fantastic Four into both himself and monkeys.
Huh?
I can't make this up, but this is an actual character in Marvel Comics, and it works. It works. He becomes the Red Ghost, and it's called
Of course it works.
the team is called the Red Ghost and his super
Some
apes.
somebody call Frieza.
and and typically in the main version of the comic, the not what if version, Sue and Reed go out and look for the meteorite while Ben and Johnny, or typically just Ben, fight the apes and the ghost, whose ability is very similar to the ghost character in Ant-Man and the Wasp. She can like this character can phase through things and is very hard to hit. Um and so this time the Thing doesn't have to worry about Ghost and the apes. He can very much just simply focus on the Ghost because they have Spider-Man. And Spider-Man helps by taking on all the apes single-handedly, while Johnny and Reed look for the crystal on the or whatever that's on the meteor. Johnny can like survey from above since he's flying up, and then Reed can grow kind of tall and look around or like whatever. But
Hmm.
while all this is happening, like they make their way back, and again, like there's more parallels to the that original comic. Everyone wants to see the first people to step on the moon, right? Again, being prior to that moon landing. Um, so everyone's like, oh, I want to know what happened with the first people to step on the moon. What did they see? What's up there? And everyone there's like a bunch of photographers, and typically in that original comic, Sue Storm turned them invisible so that they could sneak their way into the Baxter Building, but they didn't have Sue because she stayed behind. And so they finally push their way through the crowd and make their way into the Baxter Building, and Sue's gone. She said she left a note saying that she was visiting her cousin who was in Schenectady, if that's how you pronounce it. It's a place in upstate New York. And meet so the gang's like, all right, that's fine, whatever, we'll leave her be. And they start training, right? They like they're having Ben lift like this like 10-ton weight, and Johnny's flying around him, Reed's taking notes, and Spider-Man's hanging off the wall like kind of making jokes. But Sue didn't go to Schenectady. She's at a harbor because she heard Namor the Submariner's voice. And the relationship between the Submariner and Sue Storm is very similar to that of Wolverine and Jean Grey, where it's this love
Mhm.
triangle between them. So you have what ends up being Sue and Reed coming together, and Namor being left behind, similar to how Jean and Cyclops get together, and Wolverine kind of gets pushed aside, right? Um,
But now this new reality, Spider-Man is kind of like replacing Sue,
Yep.
right?
Yep. That's
Okay.
exactly what happens. Namor was being controlled, and you really don't need to know this, but Namor was being controlled by the Puppet Master, and then Namor uses this rod that he has while being controlled by the Puppet Master to control Sue and get her powers, and then attack the FF, but not really because he can't unphase through things or un. It's really weird. Ultimately, what ends up happening is that um the Puppet Master runs away, and Namor is with Sue Storm, and um, they're fighting each other. There's like this giant octopus that he summons, and they're all fighting that. And then pretty much at the end of it, it's just a 1v1 fight between Namor and Reed Richards over Sue Storm. And Sue is like really upset and really like in tears, and she's like at this point like, stop fighting, I don't want you to fight anymore over me, I've made my choice, I don't want to be with you, Reed, I want to be with Namor the Submariner. And that kind of is another distortion to that reality, like the ultimate effect of it. She ends up joining the Submariner instead of staying with Reed Richards, and that alone causes so many different paradoxes, because now you have like, there's no Franklin and Valeria Richards anymore, and Doctor Doom could be dead, right? Like other alternate realities could be different because of the fact that like Sue isn't a member of the Fantastic Four anymore, right? There's a lot of things that she does later on that are really impactful, and she ends up marrying or being with Namor, and Namor turns her genetically into one of his kind. Namor is an Atlantean, and so he turns her into an amphibious Atlantean. But
Nice. So he's Aquaman.
pretty much. And so the only issue is that Namor's a mutant, right? He's an Atlantean with an X-Men mutation, and he has two mutations. Typically, it's only one, and it's that at the bottom of his feet he has. Have you ever seen Percy Jackson?
I have not.
All right. Well, it makes it harder to explain. But I'm googling Namor's feet if you want to see it. Um,
Oh
he
yes,
has
feet
these,
pics.
yep, feet pics. This is what Namor looks like. I'm sorry if this is TOS of looking at a man in just his underwear, but he has these little wings on his ankles, and those let him like fly, but they also make him like super fast underwater. Like he can like jet underwater. And his other power is that he can, since he's half human, he can breathe on Earth, or on like, he doesn't need to breathe underwater like Atlanteans do. And so when Sue turns into an amphibian, like she can't breathe. They're underwater, but they're in like this dome, and she starts suffocating. She's like, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And so like Reed jumps to her side, he's like, I gotta help her, and Namor like, be gone, and he like breaks the glass, and like the water starts flowing in, and she's like, she can finally breathe again. Um, and so the FF, they get back on the ship, and Sue stays with um Namor. They get together, and Ben's like, when they're on the ship and they're heading back up to the surface, Ben's like, "Why'd you let her go? Why'd you do it? Like, she didn't mean to do it. She didn't want to actually go with you. She did it out of like impulse." And he's like, "Maybe, but maybe now I can forget. She can be the she's she is known as the bridge between Atlantis and what's up, Sustain? But she's known as the bridge between Atlantis and the human world because of that bond she has with the Submariner. And he says now that they're together, maybe she can be the protector of both the surface world and Atlantis. And I'll pretend that it means more to me than it means just that, like her being the protector, than it does me losing a wife, right? And so Peter as well, he's like, he feels bad. He starts crying. He's like, I if I would have, like not joined, if I would have left, taking that Daily Bugle job, Sue would still be here. I wouldn't have outshined her. And in doing so, like Johnny consoles him. He's like, look, this is destiny. This is fate. This is the only outcome that could have happened. I'm sure if you never joined our team, Sue would have still joined Sue would have still joined Namor. And us realizing that
Yeah,
she
no.
would have joined Reed. She would have picked Reed in that dimension. But that that was the first What If episode, and there was a lot longer. There was definitely a lot of like stuff in between that like really didn't need to be like told. But that was that first What If episode. It's pretty much Spider-Man joins the FF. They become the Fantastic Five, and then Sue becomes the wife of Namor. Yeah, pretty much. That's how it goes. And
Was
I
there any other kind of an ending to that, or
that was
does
the
it
only
continue on,
that
or
was the only ending that I read. There is another episode. Yeah, so let me get to Addict's question first. There was another comic in which um what it's called What If Sue Storm Married Namor? And I don't know if it's a continuation or just another side. I haven't read too many Fantastic Four comics to know truly if like at some point Sue was like kidnapped and like forced to get married to Namor or like it sounds like plausible, but it isn't. It may not be. Um, Sustained, to get to your question, it's a 5, and we're covering What If today. And the comic is What If Spider-Man had joined the Fantastic Four, and he became their fifth member. So that's why Spider-Man has that 5 on his chest. Um, but that's the end of the first Spider-Man comic, and we're on to the second Spider-Man comic. Now this one,
also hey sustain? I see you said hey.
yeah. So this second Spider-Man comic, I think, honestly, for me, has to be the best comic I have had the pleasure of reading. It has honestly saved my favorite relationship in it is it saved my favorite relationship in in like Marvel Comics. And this Spider-Man comic is very very like big. And so in Spider-Man number 121 and 122, it's a very I should have worn my shirt for it, but it's a very famous comic where the Green Goblin and Spider-Man are on top of the what they say is the Washington Bridge, George Washington Bridge, but to me it looks like the Brooklyn Bridge. Either way, not important. But they're fighting up there, and the Green Goblin throws Gwen Stacy off the bridge. Spider-Man thwips, and he catches her, but she snaps her neck, and she dies. And
Yep.
that was that big Spider-Man issue of number 121 and 122. And that led to characters like the Jackal reviving Gwen Stacy as a clone, and then creating Ben Riley, the clone of Spider-Man. And then that led to the entire Clone Saga, which has affected people differently. It's a very terrible comic, but it lasted ages. Um, and pretty much this comic begins with Peter, the one that lost Gwen Stacy, right? He's on top of the bridge, whichever one you wish it to be, Brooklyn or George Washington, and he's there and he's kind of sobbing, remembering. He's like, every time I try, I go for days just fighting crime and being in that crime fight, and then I come home and I see like a gift that you left me or a coffee shop that we went to, and all I can remember is you, and I know you would want me to move on and forget like all the stuff I had with you, and I swear if I didn't have like the flu that day, Spider-Man had the flu the day that he fought the Green Goblin. He's like, I could have beaten him faster, I could have dealt with him better. You shouldn't have died. And it's Spider-Man like kind of real sad that he says that he lost Ben and then her father, Gwen's father, and now Gwen. And so there's Watu in the back kind of saying there are times when I really want to interfere, but I can't. if I interfere now and show Peter these alternate realities of what could have been, would they ease his conscience or would they make him more envious and more jealous? And this comic is what if Peter Parker had saved Gwen Stacy? Um, and it's the comic goes back, it like rewinds itself back to that George Washington Bridge fight scene with the Green Goblin, Gwen Stacy unconscious on the top, and
But this time,
this time,
Spidey took his flu shot and does not have the flu.
sadly he still does have the flu, but he does
Oh,
things differently. Um,
okay.
he webs the Green Goblin, he pulls him back, and then Goblin kind of he gets back on his glider and slams into Gwen Stacy. She falls off the bridge, and Peter at that moment when he sees Gwen falling down the bridge, you know, a thousand thoughts are rushing to his head of what he can do to save her, and instinctively he goes to shoot the webs, and that's what he does in our reality, our version, what we know. But he covers his fingers with the web shooters and gives it a second. He hesitates, right? And so instead of shooting her down with the webs and then forgetting that, he's super strong and she's not as durable as him, right? Instead, he does a different play and he dives in after her to save her, right? And
Mhm.
I don't know how the science of this works. I'm sure physics can explain it, but he tightens his leg muscles and in doing so propels himself faster than Gwen and catches her. When he catches her, he shoots his webs and he tries to get onto another pylon of that bridge, Brooklyn or George Washington, whatever you want it to be. But the wind, it misses, and so he's plummeting down to the bottom of the Hudson River, and so he takes Gwen and he turns to the side so that he would take the impact, and they land at the bottom of the ocean. And here's him missing the pylon with Gwen Stacy, kind of like she's supposed to be passed out or like unconscious. And the Green Goblin, he's smiling, he's laughing. I've killed Spider-Man. I killed Spider-Man. No one could have survived that fall. Um, and with Spider-Man dead, I can continue on with my goal of making this criminal enterprise in New York that I wanted. And
Now I can roll in New York.
yep,
Yeah.
yep, the Green Goblin and his yep, that's perfect. Perfect by the way. Imitation of the Green Goblin. I honestly thought that what's the fuck? What's that actor's name called? I thought he was in the call with us here today. I forgot the actor that played him. God damn it, it would have been.
Willem Dafoe?
Yeah, Willem Dafoe, that's his name. I was thinking, I don't know why. I think it was because we were having that Spider-Man conversation earlier, but I was definitely thinking of, I was definitely thinking of Seth Rogen, which is 100% wrong. It was so
Yes,
wrong, but
Seth
I was like,
Rogen is Green Goblin.
yeah, Seth Rogen is a
Yes.
Green Goblin. Um, but you know, after a while, the Green Goblin he flies off. Yo, it'd been crazy. Yo, we need to get William Defoe in our podcast as for that Green Goblin episode. Um,
Bruh. I'll
um,
just be asking him questions the whole time.
Mr. Defoe, did you really need to wear that mask, or is your face that distorted enough where you could have just put green face paint on and been?
Mr. Defoe, what was the purpose of you working in 12 minutes the game?
It's great, Mr. Defoe. Why weren't you Norman Osborn in the Spider-Man PS5, PS4 video game?
Mr.
And
Defoe.
it's
Are you
yeah.
in Spider-Man 3?
Are you in? Yeah. Um, Pretty much though. Um, After he flies off, Peter pulls his way out of that murky water and performs CPR on Gwen. He takes off his mask and he starts giving her like mouth to mouth and palpitating her chest and whatnot. And Gwen wakes up. She's like, she coughs up all the water, and then she looks. She's like super scared. She's like, "Oh my god!" At this point, Peter hadn't told Gwen that he was Spider-Man, and Gwen still blames Peter or well Spider-Man for the death of her father. And so she's super scared. She's like horrified, and she's like, you're the reason my dad died. I'm dating the guy that killed my dad." And Peter's like begging on his knees, like, "Please, I'm so sorry. Can you just hear me out?" And after a long conversation and him explaining what happened that day, you know, um, no, again, a different story here in that if you remember Gwen Stacy in the Amazing
Oof.
Spider-Man, they
Maybe should have used your webs, Peter.
oof. But it
Oof.
honestly, I like the way it ended. This one, I'm glad Gwen Stacy survived. But if you remember the way that the Amazing Spider-Man in the first movie, the way that the dad dies is the lizard kills him, or you know, I
Yep.
almost said Killer Croc. That's wrong character. The lizard, they're both reptiles, okay, in my defense. But the way the lizard he kills the dad in the comics, it's actually Doc Ock. Doc Ock like throws the kid off a bridge, and like the dad grabs him and like pushes him aside, like pushes him to safety. But then the bridge fall or collapses and he dies. Um, right? Or
Dude, the
yeah, like
Stacy
yeah,
family, they just cannot catch a break with
it really
bridges.
can't, really can't. Um, but or like something like that. They explained how like the dad saved the boy and he couldn't get him to a doctor in time. He was hit by like rubble or something. Um, but she tells him, she's like, what did my dad say anything before he died? And Peter says he's like, your dad told me, and he said these words. He said, Peter, take care of my daughter. And instinctively meaning that Gwen Stacy's dad um always knew that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, and he kept that secret from like knowing well that the NYPD was after Peter Parker, or well, Spider-Man. He kept silent about it because of the relationship Peter had with his daughter, and he said that his last words were to love and cherish and protect the love that they had between each other. And Peter like he comes down and he says, I haven't done a good job of you know, living up to your father's wishes, right? And cherishing you and loving you the way I have. And let's see if I can get to it. And Peter proposes. He's, this is the worst place to do it, but Miss Stacy, will you marry me? And he tells her like, you don't have to think about this. You don't have to say yes. And she like, jumps into his arms. She's like, yes, yes, yes,
So,
I'll do it.
okay.
There's a lot. There's a lot here to
this
handle.
man, this man proposes with the Green Goblin up there, just yeah.
Green Goblin at this point is like
He's like, look,
past the Hudson
I just
River.
saved your life. All right,
You're gonna
I just
marry me
saved your
now.
life. Look, quick, let me pull out my play card. Will you marry me?
And it worked. She said yes. I mean, the
I'm
biggest Chad move.
look, hey, that is a pretty big move.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I will have to keep that in my playbook. Save the girl's
Save
life.
the girl's life off of in
That's
New
when
York.
you drop to a knee.
Yep. Yep. But she says yes. She says she wants to marry him, and then he tells her like, I can't leave the Green Goblin. Starting up this criminal enterprise.
I can't just leave, that.
Yeah. Green Goblin at this point, he wasn't just like sailing above them, like watching them. He had like dipped all the way down towards like
Oh yeah, no,
Manhattan.
he believes they're dead.
Yeah, he 100% believes they're dead, and at this point, because of that, has
It would be so much more funny if he was just kind of just hovering
hovering
around,
around
just
them like
going in
laughing
circles.
maniacally. But at this point, believing that Pete killed Spider-Man, he gathers the crime bosses, right, and all their henchmen, and he wants them to give control of his criminal, like, of their criminal enterprise. They want him all to give it to the Green Goblin. And they're like, why should we? And he's like, because I killed Spider-Man. And they're like, we don't believe you, so you need to show us some proof. And then right as they say that, Spider-Man drops on him. He's like, yeah, what kind of proof you got that you killed me? And Green Goblin's like, what? No one could have survived the fall that bad. You surely should have died. And Spider-Man, he starts beating the crap out of the Green Goblin. He's like, look, I can't allow you to keep tormenting my family. And he beats him up. And while he does it, all the crime bosses and their goons, like, they start running away. But the Green Goblin, he's like, look, if you kill me now, if you turn me into jail, I'll swear to God, I'll yell out your name. I'll tell everybody who you are. And all those people that were running away, they just turn and they're like, whoa, the Green Goblin knows who Spider-Man is. And so they all jump Spider-Man. They're in like, Spider-Man's like, wait, I gotta like really fend off these people now, and he's like, there's like thousands of people, he's just beating them all up, and Green Goblin takes that opportunity to run away while they're fighting, and
Mhm.
he heads down an alley with one of those like mail cartridges thingies, those like little thingies on the side of the streets where you can put your mail in, and the guys they pick them up, they hand them. You know what I'm talking about? Those little blue things. If you're
Yeah.
from New York, people from New York will know there's one on every block. But he runs down there and he dumps this envelope, right? This one right here. He dumps this envelope. He's like, no matter what happens tonight, whether I die, I have beaten Spider-Man today because I shipped this envelope out, presumably at this point um with his, oh no, I deleted one of my pictures. Oh well. Presumably with um
His
his
identity in it.
identity in it, yeah. And so he heads back all maniacally. He has already removed his mask, and he's explaining to Harry. He's like, he offers pretty much Harry a chance. He's like, you can join my criminal enterprise, join me. And Harry declines, like, I can't do it. And he's like, you and Spider-Man, you and your friend Peter, bunch of traitors. And he's like, whoa, 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 even if it's true that Peter is Spider-Man, I can't have you like, going around and committing crimes. You're my dad. And I, I had the picture. Apparently it deleted, but Norman bitch slaps the crap out of Harry. He sends him flying like across like this like huge room, just like one of those like mansion study rooms. Just slaps him across and he just goes flying. And Peter lands in. He's like, whoa, 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 you know, can't do that to him. And he beats up Norman, right? Like just there, just swinging at him. And Harry's like, whoa, that's
Spider-Man in this reality really throwing hands
it
with Norman
really
all the
is,
time.
man. And Harry be like, "Yo, that's still my dad." He goes up and like hits him with like the back of like this, like one of those candle holders, like those long candle holder thingies. And he hits him with it, and Peter instinctively like hits him back, and Harry goes flying, and Peter goes to him and he's like, "I'm sorry, I didn't really mean to hit you. I thought you were someone else." And it's like it's instinctively, and Norman at that second, like knowing that he's probably gonna lose, pulls out a detonator. It's a tiny little black detonator, and he's like, I'll blow up the building. I won't live, but I know Spider-Man won't. Like if I blow this up, right? And so, um, right as he's about to hit the button, Harry stands up for himself and it's kind of like heading up for Spider-Man, like trying to fight Spider-Man pretty much, and saying like, you can't do this to my dad. That's still my dad, And he's like, at that moment, Norman and the Green Goblin, it kind of works as MP, like sort of like multiple personality disorder. He's kind of like in and out of Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin kind of thing. So
Mhm.
he snaps out of being the Green Goblin and heads back into just being Norman Osborn. He's like, what am I doing? I'm about to blow up my own son and the mansion I've left for him. Like he throws away the detonator and he's like, son, I'm sorry. He goes in, he gives him a hug, and Harry's like, we're still friends, and I'm so sorry for all the trouble that my dad's done to you and Gwen, and we just need the day. If you can like leave, we need like time to you know be together, right? And he does. Peter like heads out. He's like, I gotta go.
Yeah, but that envelope, though.
Yeah, it comes back to bite Peter. Don't worry. And so he heads back home, tells, he gets in his regular clothes, him and Gwen. They go up and they tell Aunt May, he's like, look, we're getting married. We really would like for you to be there. And, Aunt May's super happy. She's always wanted Peter to be married. She also doesn't know that Peter is Spider-Man. She hates Spider-Man. She's like, the devil incarnate is Spider-Man. And, they head back, and Flash Thompson is, who's also, by the way, Gwen Stacy's ex, is Peter's best man, and they get together, they get
Well, that's
married.
awkward.
Yeah, very awkward. But here's them getting married, and right as they hit those lips kiss, it's very short lived. Everyone had been waiting at this point for Jameson. In this reality, it's the regular reality that we know. He works for the Bugle, and everyone was worried about like where was Jameson? He's probably out getting some cheap gift for Peter. And instead, Jameson busts into the church. He has the envelope in his hand, and there are the cops. It's like, there's Spider-Man, arrest him. It's Peter Parker. He's been playing us like fools. He's been laughing at us behind our back because he's Spider-Man. And there's undisputable proof in this picture. And Aunt May faints, and everyone's like, "Whoa, we need to get May to a hospital." And Robbie's there. Robbie's like, "Dude, that was the biggest dick move you could have pulled. This is his wedding day, and you bust in and arrest him." And Peter, he's like instinctively leaps out of a window. The cops all turn and start shooting at him, but it gets kind of their attention away from May. And Robbie, helps Gwen. Like Robbie walked Gwen down the aisle since she didn't have a dad. Robbie being the editor in chief of the Daily Bugle. Let's see if I can find a picture of Robbie Robertson. Funny name.
Does this
Robbie
does this happen to lead into One More Day?
No, it does not. One
Okay.
One More Day is a result, and I wanted to cover it during it, but One More Day is a result of Peter taking off the mask during Civil War. When Peter unveils
Okay.
himself to the world on national
But that
television, that
happens
is
that
One More
happens
Day.
like in the main timeline, not a
Yep,
what
not
if.
on What If.
Okay.
Um, and so, Peter, he's standing on top of a building. He can't see his wife. His aunt is in the hospital. He can't see his aunt because the whole world knows. And the Daily Bugle published it front page. Peter Parker, my photographer, is Spider-Man. And Robbie's taking care of Gwen. Gwen can't see her husband. Aunt May has passed out because her nephew and the only prodigy of her family is the devil that she believed to be, right? And it's that's how the comic ends. It's very bittersweet. It was really nice when they proposed and they had that special meeting and he saved her, and then it's really like terrible at the end when he finally marries like this girl who I believe is like the best relationship. Um, so yep, it was very bittersweet. And again, thank you, Attic, for reposting. The links for everything are on that right. The YouTube channel and the Google form, they're on the right in case you haven't voted. But um, again, since What If is happening now, for everyone who isn't caught up with the MCU version of What If, I want to get into it now. So big spoiler warning for it. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend, or if you're not caught up to it, slash you don't want to watch it, slash if you could stay if you don't want to watch it, if you're caught up, but if you're not and you want to
If you're
watch
not
it,
caught up, press
please,
X.
yeah,
Get out of
get
here.
out of the stream. Leave. I'll give you 5 seconds. I'll catch it down.
And if it's on YouTube,
Yeah, if it's on YouTube.
close out.
Yeah, yep. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. What if time? Current Marvel What If. All right, perfect. Glad to hear it. Current Marvel What If. Alex and I were talking about this in the beginning. What our favorite episodes were. Alex said he liked that Doctor Strange one. What if he lost his heart instead of his hands? The heart being a reference to what's her name? Um, I had her name like this morning
I
too.
can't even call myself a Marvel fan anymore because I completely forgot her name.
Yeah, neither can I. I guess that's the end of the podcast because I
That's
can't
that's
remember
the
her
end of
name.
Marvel
That's
Buddies.
the
All
end of
right,
Marvel,
thank
but
you.
it's alright. No. It starts with a P, or it has a P in it. Catherine Palmer, that's her name. Dr. Palmer. He loses her in the car accident. They're together, and she dies. Um, very very big, very major, and he that entire time, Doctor Strange is trying to find a way to bring her back, but it's just a paradox. It's meant to happen. He uses the time stone. He
It's an
learns.
absolute point.
Yep, that as stated, an absolute point. Doctor
Is
Strange.
there is there any other absolute points in the comics, or is
um,
that something that they just
made
made
up
up for
for the
that
what if
particular episode?
that I know of. I can't say. Because the multiverse is always changing and it's always being rebooted. Um, I know recently, again, if you guys want me to cover an event, um, for the last Secret Wars, it was the whole universe got rebooted, into just one mainstream Marvel universe. So now everybody is back. Miles no longer lives on 1001, whatever the universe was. he's back. They're all back on the main Marvel continuity timeline, which is 616. Um, so at this point, I don't know if there are any. I guess that would probably be a absolute point. The this Secret Wars event would be. There's just a bunch of like, especially too with how much time gets changed and like pretty much how many characters are time traveling. You have like those alternate versions of Kang the Conqueror and all the X-Men that all this stuff that the X-Men do with Cable heading back and Apocalypse and all that. So there's just a lot of like stuff that can't be changed. Um but you have like Doctor Strange attempting to go back in time there and trying to work his way through all those paradoxes trying to find a way to save her. The Ancient One comes back. It's like you can't do it. There's no way to do it. And so Doctor Strange is like, I'm not strong enough, but I will be, and he taps into the dark dimension. Again, that's also a reference to the What If comic. What if Doctor Strange was a disciple of Dormammu? That is an actual What If comic that came out in this time. Um, but it's a reference to that. He learns he taps into that dark dimension and tries to use Dormammu's like powers and all those powers of the dark dimension to bring back Catherine Palmer, and he does. He does it, but at the cost of the entire universe under him. And right as that universe is collapsing and Uatu's watching it die, he steps in and he says, "It was better for you to have done nothing at this point because now you are trapped in a collapsed universe by yourself with the only woman you ever loved being the last person on this universe aside from you, and she hates you." So there's like I would have rather let her die and be in that better place than for that to have happened, right? Um,
Yeah,
that's
no, that ending is so dark.
very dark. And there's a lot of like dark endings to this things like that. A lot of What If comics have those very big, dark, brooding endings. Some of them are say like what if this character lived, but a lot of them are like, what if the Hulk had died when he met up with Wolverine, being that the Hulk's weakness is adamantium, which is what's found in Wolverine's claws. Um, what if Rick Jones had died? What if the Avengers had killed off all the rest of the Marvel characters? There's one event where Kang the Conqueror tricks the Avengers and tells them that all these new heroes and the Fantastic Four and all these other heroes that are popping up are villains. They grow up to be villains at the end, and you need to beat them before they become villains. And so they get into this big fight, and the Avengers fight off all the other heroes like Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Daredevil, Spider-Man, blah 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 blah. But at the end of the like actual comic, um, a different version of Kang comes and tells them like, you know, this isn't actually what's happening. A version of Kang that tries to be good comes back. Also, by the way, this just aside, this alternate version of Kang becomes Iron Lad, the apprentice or young Avenger version of Iron Man. Um,
So it's just a version of King the Conqueror.
yep, as Iron Man or Iron Lad. Here, I'll show you a picture of Iron Lad.
Bro, that is absolutely insane.
Yep, and there's just a bunch of these like different what if versions. Here's Iron Lad. Everyone believes him to be Iron Lad. Being the kid from Iron Man 3.
Yep.
Yep. Everyone thinks
Wouldn't that be wild
it
if we
would
find
be.
out he's just a
He's
variant of
just a
King?
variant of Kang. He is Kang the Conqueror. And uh, if anyone's seen Loki, we all know. Again, spoilers. Five, four, three, two, one. All right, I'm counting you down from five. It's good. At the end of Loki, um, the villain is Kang the Conqueror. So it'd have been very very crazy, very different endings. And yeah, there's like what if
Oh, with a twist,
with a twist.
because he's not actually known as King
Nope,
in
he's
this
known as
reality.
what is his name like the
He's he who
He Who
remains, but
Remains.
MCU's version.
version of Kang the Conqueror. Yeah. He Who Remains,
Yep.
funny enough, is I at least in the comics was never Kang the Conqueror, but I liked how they made this
I
like
like how they
nobody.
combine the two
Yep.
characters.
Very much a nobody character in the Marvel comics, like this old decrepit man. But now he's like that I know of at least. But now he's like part of Kang the Conqueror's
Yeah,
dynasty.
now he is literally King the Conqueror at his end game.
um, which is great. And there's like, honestly, there's a bunch of What If comics that are really great. And that have become like modern, like have transitioned into that like modern version of Marvel comics. I'm trying to see here, like just which comics are like really good. And I definitely recommend like if you guys want to read Marvel comics, um, there's there's a lot of what ifs. Right after 84, in 89, and I can cover these 1989 issues of What If. There are a lot of different comics. Let's see here.
How many more issues does this comic go into?
So
Spider-Man marrying Gwen.
that's just each comic is just one issue. But they're fairly detailed and long. There are 47 issues of this original What If comic. Um, and some of them are they're a little weird as you get towards the latter end because they start being so towards issue 33, I'd say, they start being two characters put together. Um, so like what if there's one what if Beast and the Thing kept mutating after their initial mutations? Right? There's just like combined stuff. And but there's they reboot the series in 1989. So like, what if the alien costume had possessed Spider-Man, right? The alien costume being the symbiote. Um,
Well, that kind of does happen with the black suit,
it
right?
it does in a way, yes. I guess in this reference they mean like,
Just
what if
straight up like
like
Venom,
Venom
like he
being
becomes
yep
Venom.
yep like what if Spider-Man is ultimately and always is Venom? What if the X-Men had died on their first mission? That first mission being the initial fight against Magneto. Um, is what I'm assuming. Unless they're talking about the original fight where the X-Men fight Magneto, get captured, and then the Chris Claremont's version of the X-Men come in, which is Wolverine. If I'm remembering correctly, Chris Claremont's X-Men were Wolverine, Colossus, Nightcrawler, uh, Banshee, and Thunderbird or Warbird, one of those two. They're very similar. Uh, Only Warbird dies in that issue, or he dies like 3 issues later. Um, there's a bunch of like I actually think the 1990s version of it had a little bit better characters. Um, so like there's one. What if the Silver Surfer had possessed the Infinity Gauntlet? Um, I can cover the Infinity Wars event again in a later issue. There is a lot of like these like there's a What If Wedding album with the X-Men. Um, there's a lot of like weird different ones. Like and then towards the end it gets kind of like the purpose of What If kind of changes. So they introduce like a female Spider-Man and they're like, what if Spider-Man was this next generation Spider-Girl and who is she kind of thing. It strays away from like taking previous comics and changing one event in it and making it like a whole new comic to just like this other aside thing from it. But there are definitely some. There are like like there's a rock and like one side of the rock is covered with like just diamonds. It's like gems, bro. I'm telling you, there are so many like I could have today could have been like a 3 hour episode of how many great comics there were from What If.
Well, I
Um,
definitely think a
yeah,
second episode is needed on What If.
yeah, for sure. I can definitely cover a second What If comic, and I can do this one from the 70s run that I did today, and I can definitely do a 90s run of What If.
Well,
And I
Mike,
can do a 2021 comic because if you guys are interested, What If is being rebooted into a comic book series um currently. So there's a
oh
current
yeah,
What If
definitely.
comic
That's got to
running
be
now.
covered.
Yep. So if
Well, Micro, I got a quick question for you.
what's up?
What can we expect next week, or do you want to keep that a surprise?
So let's see. You guys can still vote now up until that's the YouTube channel. That's the wrong link I had. Um, Here it is. You guys can still vote up until tonight if you guys want to see who it is exactly that we are covering. But I can let you know right now who is winning the responses. Nobody. So I get to pick. That's typically how I do it. If there is only one vote, I for different characters, I pick. Um, I have been requested to do Howard the Duck and Cosmo the dog, and I think that would be a really great episode to do. It's very
I would like
goofy,
to know
very
more about
wacky.
Howard the Duck.
Howard the Duck is great. You know what they say? If you're all out of luck, you gotta go duck. Um,
Yep.
yeah. So I wouldn't mind covering Howard the Duck next week, but you guys still have up until pretty much tomorrow to vote on who you think I should cover for next week. Or yeah, for this week coming. But as of right now, that's all I have. And I'm so glad to have Addicts back here and full time with us for the Marvel Buddies stream. And I want to thank everyone who tuned in and listened. I think today was a very special episode of the Marvel Buddies podcast.
And
And
if you're catching us on YouTube, drop a comment.
for sure, like and comment and hit a sub if you can. It'd be great. It'd be wonderful. Really helps branch out the Marvel. Yeah, I look. I know you were here last week, Sustain, and I definitely didn't like Shang-Chi. I didn't like how I presented him. I didn't do Yeah, it's awesome. I'm glad to see it. You got to show me some of that artwork. But I definitely didn't like Shang-Chi, and I have to do him justice. I didn't like the way the episode ended. As I was giving that podcast episode, I knew I didn't like it. So I promise that I will redo Shang-Chi, um, and add more to what it is. I think there's a lot more to it. Um, I very much just didn't know what to read for him. Um, but I will go back eventually to Shang-Chi and redo him. I think I can do a better job. And if there's any characters you want to hear, you want me to redo, an event you want to hear, an event you want me to redo, anything, Google form is where you can find it. I've already linked it here, and that is it for today's episode. Thank you so much to everyone that tuned in, and I'll see you guys next week.
See y'all.